Back to the channel where today we are going to be previewing the Buffalo Bills for the 2026-2027 season. And without further ado, let's get into this Bills preview. Starting off with the coaching staff, the Bills basically have a brand new coaching staff. I mean, technically a brand new coaching staff, even though Joe Brady, their head coach, we'll talk about first, is a promotion from offensive coordinator to head coach. He still is in a brand new role on top of the brand new OC and DC they bring in. But starting with Joe Brady, as I mentioned earlier, he was their offensive coordinator from 2025, 2024. I believe he was their interim offensive coordinator in 2023. He worked with the Panthers as well before this. He was their OC in 2020 and 2021. He was the LSU receiver coach at that 2019 LSU team with Jefferson and Chase. So he has been around. He has some experience, even though he's on the younger side and more inexperienced. He is one of those guys that can really be that new ascending young offensive mind that it seems like every team's looking for. That LSU season really brought him onto the scene. The Panthers gave him a chance initially. He had some good moments there with, guys like Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback, but then he goes to the Bills, gets under a much better system, gets with Josh Allen, and really starts to emerge, gets the OC role, and now he gets promoted as head coach. And I really like the hire. I think he can be one of those young ascending offensive minds. I think he's shown good moments with this Bills offense. They've had really good offenses under Joe Brady. Obviously, it helps having Josh Allen as your quarterback, but he's really been able to, maximize Josh Allen, use Josh Allen to the best of the offenses for the better of the offense and able to produce very good offenses as the main offensive guy there. And now he gets to be the head coach. When it comes to all like the head coach part of being a head coach, like more than just play calling. I think he definitely has potential to be a culture changing type guy and not just someone that's really good at calling plays and someone that can actually be a head coach. Because you don't always see that where like the geniuses on offense or defense can translate to being a coach of an entire team. I do think Joe Brady has the potential to be that, although we do have to see it. I do think there is that in him. And a good hire that I think can help Joe Brady out is their offensive coordinator. Bring in Pete Carmichael. He was the Broncos senior offensive assistant in 2024, 2025. He was the Saints offensive coordinator from 2009 all the way to 2023. Had some really good offenses with Drew Brees. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience that he can really use to help Joe Brady get through this transition of OC to head coach. So yes, Pete Carmichael is the offensive coordinator. He could very likely play the senior offensive assistant role and just be a assistant to Joe Brady and use that experience that he has to help Joe Brady. So I really like that hire because he's not going to be the play caller. That's what Joe Brady's there for. But if you're not going to have him be a play caller, I think that role or getting a guy that can play that role like Carmichael is honestly perfect. And then their DC was honestly another great hire. They bring in Jim Leonard, who was the Broncos pass game coordinator in 2024, 2025. So he wasn't the main defensive play caller in that Broncos defense. That was Vance Joseph. But again, one of the better defenses in the league recently. So he has experience being a part of a good defense and also under a very great defensive mind in Vance Joseph. He had some coaching interests from other teams as well at defensive coordinator like the Chargers and the Ravens this offseason. He was the Wisconsin defensive coordinator from 2017 to 2022 slash DB coach. And Wisconsin had three top 10 defenses nationally in that span. So he's a proven guy. He is a great defensive mind. I like his upside as an NFL defensive coordinator, defensive coach, whatever you want to call it. So I love the Joe Brady promotion. I love the Pete Carmichael hire, and I love the Jim Leonard hire. So I think this is a very good Bills coaching staff, and I think they have a lot of potential to be a very good coaching staff going into this season and even going into the future with the youth of a Joe Brady and even the youth of a Jim Leonard. Now going on to this Bills offense, and of course, starting off with the major offseason changes that this Bills team made on offense. Now, obviously, this isn't a big deal at the beginning because they have Josh Allen at quarterback, but they do switch backups going from Mitch Trubisky to Kyle Allen. Mitch Trubisky was a very good, serviceable backup last year. When you saw that game he had at the end of the year against the Jets, and it was yes, it was the end of the year and the Jets were playing their starters, but I do think he is a better backup last year than a guy like Kyle Allen is. Although I don't mind Kyle Allen as a backup quarterback, he's also someone who's a very capable backup who's played some solid football and also has some history there, I believe, with Joe Brady dating back to their days on the Panthers. So It's nothing crazy because you have your superstar top quarterback in football, Josh Allen, but you never know. Josh Allen has to miss a game. It's good to have a quality backup. And yes, maybe Kyle Allen's not as good of a backup as Mitch Trubisky is, but he's still a very quality backup. Then the big move that this team made on offense is the entire receiver room basically got shook up. They move on from Gabe Davis, Brandon Cooks, and Curtis Samuel, and they trade for DJ Moore and they draft Skylar Bell. Now, receivers they lost didn't really play too much of a role last year. You have Gabe Davis, who didn't really do too much in his return with the Bills in just 6 games. Brandon Cooks also had a small role in just 5 games. Did have a great game against Philly in the regular season, but he went from the Saints in the first half of the season, played the last 5 games with the Bills, also not the biggest impact. Curtis Samuel only played 6 games. So it really wasn't the biggest impact from these 3 guys, but because they all three are still quality receivers, I did put them on this list here for losses that this team had at receiver because they were all healthy. If Cooks was on the team the whole year, if Curtis Samuel was healthy, if Gabe Davis was healthy, they would have actually played meaningful roles and you would have been able to call it a loss. Even though I do think, despite losing these 3 guys, they did get better at receiver simply just because of the DJ Moore trade. Yes, DJ Moore wasn't the best version of himself last year in Chicago. He's still a really good receiver. He's still the best receiver on this team, the best receiver Josh Allen has probably had since Stephon Diggs. So I really like the trade. And Skylar Bell, their fourth round pick out of UConn, I think has a lot of upside as well. So I do think they got better at receiver. And then finally, offensive line, they move on from Ryan Vandemark and David Edwards, and they bring in Austin Corbett and Lloyd Cushenberry. I mean, Vandemark, he's a solid depth tackle about it. David Edwards, good player. I like David Edwards. Saints gave him a big contract. It was basically between David Edwards and Connor McGovern, who this Bills team was going to pay on this offensive line. They chose McGovern, so it's a tough loss losing David Edwards, especially when Austin Corbett's your replacement. Corbett's a fine player, right? He's not horrible. Austin Corbett. He's not someone you want starting at center or guard necessarily, but as a backup, he's a very solid option in a potential position battle for that starting guard spot. We will see, but obviously him and their current guard are definitely not as good as David Edwards, so definitely got worse there. And then Lloyd Cushenberry is currently the backup to Connor McGovern, who we mentioned. He's okay, right? So they definitely got worse at maybe O line depth. It's really just David Edwards, right? David Edwards is a big loss. Everything else is just depth that got switched around. So overall, I do think this team got better on offense simply because of the DJ Moore trade. It was really the DJ Moore trade and the David Edwards not re-signing is basically the 2 major changes that this Bills team made on offense. And I think overall, they got better just because they gave Josh Allen a true weapon that he hasn't had once again since Stephon Diggs. Now we can talk about the Bills offense as a whole, and we'll start off with the main man himself, the best player on this team, and that's Josh Allen. He's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the league, the best dual threat quarterback. He finished third in MVP last year. He continues to improve as a passer, especially when it comes to taking care of the football. He did have 10 interceptions last year, but you've seen him get significantly better. I mean, he barely had any the year before when he did win MVP. Had almost 3,700 yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He had almost 614 just on the ground alone. And he obviously, we know how good Josh Allen is and how he can basically do anything you need at the quarterback position. I think, as I mentioned in the offseason changes, adding a guy like DJ Moore, the best receiver he's had probably since Stephon Diggs, I think could make Josh Allen have an even better year, even though there's really not much more room to grow with Josh Allen. He's shown you everything he can. And when it comes to just overall ability, honestly, the only question with Josh Allen is the playoffs. Can he get to the Super Bowl? He's been a good playoff performer, right? It's not like he's choked in the playoffs in terms of he just can't play, like some people say about other quarterbacks. But Josh Allen just that's the really only thing that's really hindering him right now. He's got the MVPs, he's got the regular season success. He's one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the league consistently. It's just, can he get to the big game? The Super Bowl is the only thing really stopping Josh Allen from cementing himself as one of the best quarterbacks of all time because we know the talent's there. He can do anything on the field, he can make any throw. He's, again, one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the league in history of the NFL. I think he's like currently breaking all of Cam Newton's records for rushing touchdowns, who is already the best, goal line, red zone, whatever, rushing quarterback of all time. And Josh Allen's right there with him. So there's really not much to say about Josh Allen. This doesn't need to be a super long discussion. We all know how good Josh Allen is. I've probably said that like 5 times now already. It's just, can he get it done in the playoffs? Because talent wise, production wise, ability wise, there's no questions. Nothing needs to be said with Josh Allen. It's just, can he get over the hump, right? I mean, last year was his chance, right? No Mahomes in the playoffs. Lamar wasn't in the playoffs. Even Joe Burrow, who hasn't been in the playoffs for a while, wasn't in the playoffs. Not necessarily Joe Burrow's fault, but just saying. And Josh Allen still couldn't get over it. He couldn't beat the Broncos in a very good game. It wasn't the best game out of Josh Allen. He had some bad turnovers, made some great plays, as Josh Allen will always do. But at the end of the day, couldn't beat the Broncos. He probably could have made the Super Bowl because definitely could have beat a that Patriots team, I think, in the AFC Championship. So that's really it with Josh Allen, in my opinion. I don't think really much needs to be said. We can move on to the running back position with this Bills team. Another great player at running back with James Cook. It was just another good year for Cook. Good year, great year for James Cook. He led the league with 1,600 rushing yards. He had 12 touchdowns after the year before. He led the league with 16. He had over 5 a carry, had over 95 a game, which obviously also led the league. Had almost 302 receiving as well. He's about to only be 27 years old. He has that explosive playability. He was top 5 in yards after contact amongst running backs, so he's just really tough to tackle as well. He also just seems to be getting better, even though he's already reached a level where he's a borderline top 5 running back in the NFL. He's just been getting better. Can he put himself in the Bijan Gibbs category? I think those guys are pretty comfortably the 2 best running backs in the league. Can he get to that level? I think he's in that tier 2 of running backs. Like, I mean, tier 2 is fine, right? That's a top 5, borderline top 5 running back in the league. So you're completely okay if he's in that tier 2 of running backs. This, I think, the only real question with James Cook is, can he jump up? Can he take that next jump to tier 1? And honestly, you have some really good backups behind James Cook with Ty Johnson and Ray Davis, one of the better RB2, RB3, quote unquote, duos probably in the NFL. Ty Johnson had 203 last year and also 2 receiving touchdowns. Ray Davis had just under 300 yards, averaged almost 5 a carry, even though it wasn't the biggest role because he's their third running back. But he also had 2 receiving touchdowns. It's a very good receiving threat, Ray Davis is, but so is Ty Johnson. And James Cook, while he has put up good receiving numbers, that's not necessarily his thing. His receiving ability isn't really his strength, and it isn't like he's not one of the best receiving backs in the league. Maybe that's what the question. I just answered the question. Maybe that's what he needs to do to cement himself in that Bijan Jameer tier, because Bijan's up there with McCaffrey as one of the best, as if not the best receiving back in the league. And Jameer Gibbs is also a very good receiving back. So maybe that's what James Cook has to do to cement himself as one of the best running backs in the league in that tier 1. But if he's not going to do that, you have 2 very good receiving backs in Ty Johnson and in Ray Davis as your 2 backups. Ty Johnson, or no, not Ty Johnson. Ray Davis is also a very good return threat as well, which we'll get into in our brief special teams discussion. And that's honestly it for the running backs. And I mean, you can throw Josh Allen in there in the running back discussion because he's going to account for at least 10 rushing touchdowns by himself. So him and James Cook, they were one of the best rushing teams last year. I think they were one of the top 3 most efficient rushing attacks, the overall team. And obviously a big part of that is Josh Allen and James Cook. But then we can go on to the other weapons. We'll start off with the receiver room, the big acquisition, DJ Moore, talked about him briefly. Again, wasn't a great year last year for DJ Moore and Chicago, right? He had that incredible year 1 in 2023 with Justin Fields, made people be like, should the Bears keep Justin Fields and trade the number 1 overall pick? That's how good DJ Moore and Justin Fields played last year, but a lot of it might have been DJ Moore. He had 1,308 that season. But in the 2 years with Caleb, back to Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. The first year with Caleb, he had 960 and 6. Then in year 2 with Caleb, in year 1 with Ben Johnson, he had 680 and 6. Seemed to really be getting like slowly faded away, phased out of the offense, right? He became almost a third, fourth option there in Chicago. And that's why I really love the fit here in Buffalo, because you have Shakir, who you like, obviously. You obviously love Dalton Kincaid and the rest of your tight end room, but DJ Moore is this team's best receiver, and he now can reclaim that true receiver one role in this Bills offense where he has familiarity with the offensive coordinator, Joe Brady. I mean, outside of that Chicago year in 2023, DJ Moore's best years in the NFL were with the Panthers when he was with Joe Brady. So that's why I really like the trade for DJ Moore because you have Joe Brady, and Joe Brady knows how to maximize DJ Moore. And I think it also made sense on, Chicago's end to move on from him. And yes, they gave up the 60th pick and they paid him 4 years, 110 million. But I think it's worth it for this Bills team that again needs to give Josh Allen some real legit weapons. What the disappointing end to the playoffs, I think, for DJ Moore, right? With the pick against the Rams where maybe he ran the wrong route or gave up on his route and it led to an interception. He was still really good in the playoff run. He had both game winners against Green Bay in the regular season, game winner that he had against them in overtime, and in the playoffs he had the game winner as well, or the go-ahead touchdown as well. So he was really good in the playoffs overall. Love this acquisition. And I think him and Shakir maybe are somewhat similar. I think DJ Moore's a guy that you want to just get the ball in his hands, let him make plays after the catch. Well, he might not have been the best at it last year. That's his thing. That's Shakir's thing. Shakir is one of the best in the league after the catch. Just get the ball in Shakir's hands. He had 700 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. He was second amongst receivers in yards after catch per reception. He was fourth in receivers and overall yards after catch. He's only 26 years old. Pretty reliable hands as well. Had a very good playoff run too. And he is Josh Allen's number one target that isn't a new acquisition. So I like Shakir. I think he's very underrated. And I think him and DJ Moore can maybe not complement each other very well because I think their strength kind of overlaps somewhat, but I think they can be a nice duo there at the receiver position. I think what can really maximize this duo here of Moore and Shakir is if you get a step up from Keon Coleman. He had an okay rookie year, Keon Coleman, with some promise, but it was definitely an underwhelming year too. He played 13 games, only started 6 of them compared to the 12 starts he had in the 13 games he played his rookie season, so already not the healthiest. I think some of his missed games were not injuries and he was just a healthy scratch last year. But he had 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, still had a decent amount of drops, not really expanded his game a ton, right? We all know he can be a nice big play, jump ball threat. I mean, he played D1 basketball. We all know how good he is or how good he can be at just jumping up and catching the football. But he hasn't really been able to do too much after the catch with the ball in his hands. So it's a big year 3 here for Keon Coleman. A lot of pressure on Keon Coleman as well in this third season. But if he can really take that step up, I think he can really help out guys like Moore and Shakir work across the middle of the field more if you have to actually worry about Keon Coleman. But if you're not worried about Keon Coleman, you can prioritize everything. You can condense the field to try and stop Moore and Shakir. So they really need Keon Coleman to take that next jump in this very big, important year 3. Some of the depth guys, you do have McCole Hardman, mainly special teams guy, but he has some playoff experience with the Chiefs. So maybe when it comes to playoff time, that can help. I think you saw that with this team last year with Brandon Cooks, who's been around the league. I think his experience overall helped out in the playoffs. So maybe you can get a little bit of that out of McCole Hardman. That's really about it at this point. Josh Palmer is fine depth, right? He had his good year on the Chargers in 2022 where he had like 800 yards, but really hasn't been the healthiest since that or the best since that. He did have 300 last year in 12 games. And while it was a small sample size, like he didn't get a ton of targets, only had 1 drop. So he can still be a decent depth option for this team. But I think the intriguing part of this receiver room is Skylar Bell. Now, Skylar Bell, their 4th round pick out of UConn, has a ton of upside, right? He can get open, he can make plays after the catch, similar to DJ Moore and Khalil Shakir. He was the guy on that UConn offense. Now it is UConn, so we'll see how that, playing for UConn translates to playing in the NFL on the Bills, where you're the team's 5th best receiver potentially. He has good hands as well. I like Skylar Bell. I like the upside, as I said, of Skylar Bell. And he's another guy that maybe if you can get the most out of him, he can help unlock more out of a guy like DJ Moore or a guy like Khalil Shakir. But overall, with this receiver room, you got DJ Moore. Love the trade for him. You also saw the preseason too. I know it's preseason, but that first preseason game, you really saw the impact that Moore can have with Josh Allen in this offense. You love Khalil Shakir. You have your concerns about Keon Coleman in his third season. You have the upside and intrigue of Skylar Bell, and then you just have some okay depth there with Palmer, Hardman, even Dante Pettis, who they picked up. They do have Tyrell Shavers, who probably won't play much this season because I think he tore his ACL in the playoff game against, I believe it was the Jags playoff game that he tore his ACL. There's some upside there with Shavers as well. He hasn't done too much in his first two seasons. Did have that 70-yard touchdown at the end of the year against the Jets in his rookie season where he showed you a lot of ability after the catch. So there's some intrigue there with Shavers going forward. But in terms of this season, it's really just probably the first six guys that we really talked about. We don't have to worry too much about the receiver, right? You got Moore, you got Shakir, but those two, yes, they're your two best receivers, but they're not necessarily your two best receiving options because you have Dalton Kincaid at tight end. I think still Moore might be the team's best receiver, but I think you could argue that maybe Kincaid's this team's second best receiver at that tight end position. Made Pro Bowl last year, only played 12 games, but he still managed to almost get 605. So he could have possibly gotten around like 808, 809 if he played every game. Still hasn't really been the team's true tight end one because they have a very good backup in Dawson Knox, who honestly has been the technical starter since Kincaid's been drafted there. But despite the smaller role, despite the being a little bit banged up and only playing 12 games, he was still very good last year when he was on the field. He had a very good playoff game against the Broncos with 80 yards and a touchdown. He got in the end zone in the other playoff game. And I think if we can get a healthy Dalton Kincaid as this team's true tight end one going into the season as the starter, I think we could be in for a very good season out of Dalton Kincaid and a breakout potential for Mr. Kincaid. And speaking of Knox, we talked about again one of the better tight end twos probably in the league. He had 400 yards and four touchdowns last year as that majority starter. He started like 12 games. Kincaid started like five, I think, something like that. But Knox, I really like Knox. He great hands, rarely drops the ball, and he's just a very quality, reliable option at tight end. He can block pretty well as well. And then you have Jackson Hawes as your third tight end. You want to talk about blocking as a rookie, well, one of the better run blocking tight ends in the league. Not much of a receiving threat, right? That's not really too much of a worry, especially with Knox and Kincaid as your two tight ends. But as a quote unquote offensive lineman playing the tight end position, Jackson Hawes is perfect for a run heavy team like the Bills are going to be with Josh Allen and with James Cook. Having one of those elite blocking tight ends that can basically just play six man to the offensive line, I think is a great guy to have. So it's one of the better tight end rooms in the league, probably. And speaking of the offensive line, we'll now talk about the offensive line here quickly before we wrap up this Bills offense. We'll start off with their best lineman, Dion Dawkins. Another Pro Bowl last year, his fifth straight. He's one of the better pass blocking tackles in the league, solid run blocker as well. And overall, he's just a good to really good tackle. Dion Dawkins is he's on the older side, so maybe we'll see some regression at him at some point. But right now, at his current version, he is a very good, stable tackle, and he's been on this team for a while. He knows this team. He knows Josh Allen. He knows all this because, yeah, Josh Allen's a great dual threat, but I feel like when it comes to playing tackle or offensive line for a dual threat quarterback, there's a little bit of an adjustment that needs to be made, and maybe even like knowing this guy's tendencies, like knowing what Josh Allen does when he's scrambling. So having that familiarity might help, or probably does help a lot for a guy like Dion Dawkins. And then their other best lineman is their other tackle, Spencer Brown. While Dawkins is one of the better pass blocking tackles in the league, Spencer Brown is probably one of the better run blocking tackles in the league. Not as good of a pass blocker as Dawkins is as a run blocker, right? Dawkins is very good pass blocker, solid run blocker, whereas Spencer Brown's more of a really good run blocker and an okay pass blocker. But again, Spencer Brown is really good. And for about 4 years, he's been a very good tackle, only 28 years old as well. So just overall, one of the better tackle duos in the league. Interior, it gets a little more questionable. You got, again, a little guard competition type thing with Alec Anderson and Austin Corbett. Alec Anderson really hasn't played a ton his first 2 years. He's not been the best when he has played, but he definitely can be a solid to good run blocker. I feel like at best, that's definitely his strength is his run blocking. But Corbett's probably the more reliable option at guard. Not the best, Mr. Corbett is, but he's definitely more consistent than an Alec Anderson. So you don't want Austin Corbett to be your starter in an ideal world, but I do think you probably want him starting over Alec Anderson. And then your other guard, Osiris Torrance, entering his fourth year as the starting guard for the Bills. At the moment, he's solid, right? He's a solid guard, especially in pass. Still room to improve. Not your best player, but as someone that could potentially be your weak. Now he's not your weak link. Your left guard spot's your weak link, but as someone in an ideal world, as your weak link, you're absolutely okay with Osiris Torrance. And maybe he can still get better as well because he is on the younger side, drafted in 2023. Don't exactly know how old he is, but he's on the younger side. Still room to grow for Osiris Torrance. And then finally, your center spot, you have Connor McGovern, who is the guy they paid instead of David Edwards. McGovern had back to back good years, still a good pass blocker. He can run block pretty decent as well. And I think it's a good sign that they chose him over Connor McGovern because they could have paid McGovern, or not McGovern. They could have paid David Edwards, but they chose to pay McGovern. You also got Lloyd Cushenberry, who you brought in as a backup center. Similar with Corbett, he's just a fine center, right? Not the best run blocker, solid pass blocker. It does McGovern's name is red on this depth chart because I don't think he's like practicing right now. Should be good to go week one, is what I'm seeing. But if you have to put Lloyd Cushenberry as a band aid for 1 week, 2 weeks, because McGovern's not fully healthy, it's not a bad option. Cushenberry is a more than capable band aid week one. Now, I'm pretty sure they played the Texans week one, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe you don't want Cushenberry being your starting center in that matchup. But regardless, it's a very good offensive line. You have not maybe not elite, but a very good tackle duo. You have a quality center when healthy. I say when healthy, like his injury concerns, he just might not play week one, but he's a very solid center. McGovern is. Guards, more questionable for sure. Torrance a little less questionable than your left guard spot. Do think Austin Corbett should start at left guard if you want some more stability and some more confidence at that guard spot. But nonetheless, it's a good O line. You have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You have one of the best running backs in the league. You have one of the better tight end rooms in the league. And you have two very good receivers. But now we can move on to the defense. Now on to this Bills defense. First, the offseason changes, the major ones that this Bills team made on defense. Starting off with the D line, they move on from Daquan Jones. While they didn't add anybody on the D line, I didn't really put this as a big loss. Daquan's a solid veteran defensive lineman who played some good football last year for the Bills in moments, but not really too notable or noteworthy of a departure. So kind of neutral there. At edge rusher, they do move on from Bosa and Epineza and bring in TJ Parker in the second round and Bradley Chubb. Joey Bosa, despite being 30 years old and having all his injury concerns, wasn't actually too bad for the Bills last year in the 15 games he played for them. 5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles. Epinenza had a promising year in 2024. Wasn't that great last year and just really hasn't fully worked out as a former second round pick. So kind of, unsubstantial there with the AJ Epinenza loss. And Joey Bosa, he, talent wise, maybe it's a notable loss, but we never know what version of Joey Bosa we're going to get at this point, how many games he's going to play, and if he's ever going to just how good he's going to be at any given season. And then they bring in TJ Parker, another second round pick. So they took a shot on Epineza in the second round. That didn't work out. Now they're going to take a shot on a different second round pick. We'll see how TJ Parker turns out. And then Bradley Chubb wasn't horrible last year with the Dolphins, but I do think it was a massive overpay, the money they gave Bradley Chubb. Overall, though, I left the edge rush room as neutral because they go from AJ Epinenza to TJ Parker, pretty similar at this current moment in time. And Joey Bosa and Bradley Chubb, I think, at this current version of themselves, are both very similar as well. So I left that as neutral. So not much change in terms of getting worse or getting better on the D line as a whole. Then at linebacker, they move on from Matt Milano. He has struggled to stay healthy the last 2 years, last 3 years since making his All Pro in 2022. Definitely getting older, maybe showing some signs of regression, but he's still not a bad player. And if you look at the linebacker talent that this Bills team has, I definitely think they got worse at linebacker, even if Matt Milano's nowhere near the same player he was and never a guarantee to be on the field. I do think they got worse at linebacker. Then at corner, they move on from Taron Johnson and Tre'Davious White. They bring in D. Alford and Davison Igbinison, who was, let me look quickly, he was a second round pick out of Ohio State. I mean, Taron Johnson, another guy who's definitely seen some regression, another former All Pro, definitely hasn't been the same. Also been getting banged up. Not a bad corner still by any means. Like he's still a quality player. And I think he'll be a good pickup for the Raiders, but definitely nowhere near the same player he was. Same thing with Tre'Davious White. Even though honestly, Tre'Davious White had 4 years of just never being healthy ever since again All Pro on the Bills, elite on the Bills, moves on to other teams, can't stay healthy. Then he comes back to the Bills. Actually, was pretty solid for the Bills last year, considering his age and his injury history. So I think there's honestly a chance. I don't know if he got picked up by another team. There's probably a chance that he's back on the Bills again. So we'll see. And then the corners they bring in D. Alford. I mean, D. Alford's just okay, to be honest. He had 3 interceptions last year. He can give you a little bit as a blitzer, but he's never really been a great run defender or even the best cover guy either. So he's probably at best a depth guy, but he's one of their starting corners, I'm pretty sure. And then Davidson Igbinison, second round pick out of Ohio State. I think they got worse at corner. And then at safety, they move on from Jordan Poyer and Taylor Rapp, and they bring in CJ Gardner Johnson and Geno Stone. I think it's pretty clear they got worse at safety too. I mean, Poyer and Rapp. Poyer, he went to the Bills last year. He like left the Bills. I think he went to the Dolphins. Then he returned back to the Bills, and in 10 games, he was still a good safety. Also, despite his age, similar to guys like Taron Johnson, Tre'Davious White, Joey Bosa, he was still a pretty quality player despite his age, especially in the run. His run defense is still there, and he wasn't that bad in coverage. And then Taylor Rapp, in the 6 games he played, honestly wasn't that good last year for the Bills. But yet they got worse at safety because they bring in CJ Gardner Johnson, who in 10 games with the Bears was an okay, decent player, provided some help in the run, had 2 interceptions, and was a serviceable third string, not third string, third option at safety, but nothing more than that. And Geno Stone had his great year with the Bengals, I believe. No, with the Ravens, where he like led the league in interceptions, goes to the Bengals and honestly makes them worse. I don't know how you can make the Bengals defense worse, but it seems like Geno Stone losing Geno Stone is going to help the Bengals defense. And the Bills then go ahead and pick him up. Now he's the backup. He's not a starter like he was in Cincinnati, but yeah, not the best safety the most recent seasons for Mr. Geno Stone. So I definitely think they got worse at safety. I think they got worse at corner. I think they got worse at linebacker, and their D line stayed pretty relatively neutral. So not the best off season, in my opinion, for the Bills on the defensive side of things. But now we can look at the defense as a whole, which I still think has a lot of talent. Yes, they might have got worse at those position groups, but some of that is depth. Like their backup safeties got worse. Some of their depth corners got worse, but they still have good players starting on this defense. We'll start with the D line. They do have some good players. I like Ed Oliver. I like Greg Rousseau. We'll start off with those two guys. Greg Rousseau, first with the edge rushers. He's only 26 years old. Last year was just another good year for Rousseau. He got good pressure. He had 7 sacks, was and is always a very good run defender. One of the better run defenders in the league last year. And again, overall, while sack numbers have never been the highest, he's really done everything else you want out of an edge rusher. And those sack numbers should just go up, in my opinion. And I expect them to go up with Greg Rousseau. And then Ed Oliver, your other very good D lineman on this team, only played 3 games last year. He had a torn left bicep in, I think, week 3. But he was still good in the 3 games he played. He had 3 sacks in 3 games. So technically, he was on pace for a 17 sack season. He can be a great pass rusher. He's put up good sack numbers before. I think he's got 9 or 9.5 at one point in his career. And he's just been a very good player for the Bills since getting drafted there as a very nice pass rushing D tackle alongside Greg Rousseau. And they got Deion Walker, one of your other interior D linemen, and he's a fourth round pick who's outplayed their second round pick, TJ Sanders, who we'll get into in a little bit. But Deion Walker, he got more snaps than TJ Sanders, and he was a pretty solid pass rusher right away. He had four batted passes as well. I personally really like when a D tackle can get a lot of batted passes. I think it can honestly change drives when it's third down, a guy's wide open, but all of a sudden the pass can't get there because your 6'8" D tackle or 6'7" D tackle just batted the ball away. So I like that out of Deion Walker. He had a very good preseason game as well in week one, and I think he really gets you excited in year two as a because you need that guy alongside Ed Oliver. You got Ed Oliver. I think I said that right. You got Ed Oliver as your number one interior D lineman. But you had TJ Sanders, who you drafted in the second round last year. You had Landon Jackson, he took in the third round last year. And then Deion Walker, who you took in the fourth round last year. You took three interior D linemen last year. And Deion Walker easily was the best last year. And he gives you hope because if you don't get improvement from TJ Sanders, if you don't get improvement from Landon Jackson, I mean, you still need improvement from Deion Walker, but I'm a lot more confident in that improvement compared to the other two. You took three chances on the interior of the D line in last year's draft. You needed at least one, maybe two to hit. And Deion Walker definitely gives you confidence that that was a good pick. And TJ Sanders, as I mentioned before, didn't really play a ton his rookie year, wasn't the best when he played. So a lot to prove there for Sanders. And then Landon Jackson, another guy didn't play a lot his rookie season, only 3 games. He tore his MCL and PCL, I believe, in week 10. Played weeks 5, 6, and 10. Former third round pick out of Arkansas. We'll see what they can get out of him in year two if he's hopefully fully healthy. And then you got Greg Gaines, who you bring from Tampa, veteran guy entering his 8th year. He's an okay backup D lineman. They also got their 5th round pick out of Penn State, Zane Durant. It's really just Ed Oliver solidified on that interior, and then Deion Walker, who is the most promising of their 4 young guys that they have on that interior. And then when you go back to, we'll go back to the edge room. We'll circle back. You got Bradley Chubb, who you brought in to pair alongside Greg Rousseau. As I said earlier, not a bad player. Bradley Chubb, just in general, was not that bad last year with Miami. But at 30 years old, he has had a lot of health issues recently. That contract, that 3 year, almost $44 million contract they gave Bradley Chubb seemed very aggressive. I still think he can make an impact on this team as this team's second best edge rusher on a potentially better D line than he was with in Miami, but you never know if he's going to be healthy. You never know when regression's seriously going to hit for Bradley Chubb. And you gave him a pretty like you committed to Bradley Chubb. The Bills definitely gave Bradley Chubb a commitment level contract. They're like, we are committing to you. Please be a good player for 3 full seasons. Not only do you need Bradley Chubb to be healthy for 3 full seasons, but you need him to not regress heavily in those 3 seasons. So I wasn't a big fan of the contract, but I think when we're just talking about year one, which is really what these previews are for, I don't think it's a bad pickup. And I do think he's going to be a very similar player to what Joey Bosa was for this team last year. At worst, a slightly worse player than Joey Bosa was, if you can get 15 games out of him. And then some of your depth, you got Michael Hoyt. I think that's how you say it. Hoyt only played 2 games last year for the Bills, but the year before, when he played all 17 with the Rams, he had 3 sacks. He's overall is just a solid quality edge rusher. He can be a nice because you have TJ Parker, who you took in the second round, who maybe doesn't have the highest ceiling, but he has a quality floor, but still a rookie. You want some stability, some veteran presence in that depth edge room position, especially if Bradley Chubb's going to miss time and you don't want to throw TJ Parker out there right away. You have a nice stable player there in Michael Hoyt. And then TJ Parker, again, their second round pick. I didn't mind the pick, didn't love the pick. I don't hate TJ Parker, second rounder out of Clemson. He can be a very good run defender at best. He can make some plays in pass rush. He has some upside, even if it's not the highest, because might be lacking the physical, athletic tools to really have a super high ceiling. He can be a good player. He could just be a good quality player, which yes, maybe you want in the second round to take a guy that has super high upside. But sometimes these teams be taking these players with super high upside, all the athletic tools in the world, but a super low floor. and they just stay at that floor and they never hit their ceiling. And it's like, oh well, yeah, you took them in the second round because they had a high potential, high upside. They didn't really do anything with it. When you can take a guy like T.J. Parker in the second round, which yes maybe seems high for a player without a lot of upside, but if he just is a quality player, you're looking back 5 years down the line and being like, oh, they got a good player in TJ Parker. Well, this team who took the super high upside athletic edge rusher who didn't pan out, they now regret that second round pick. Whereas the Bills are like, we got just a good quality player. And sometimes a good quality player is a good pick. So that's kind of a wait and see there with TJ Parker. Even though maybe not wait and see like, oh, how good is he going to get? Just a wait and see of if he can how much better he can get, but more of is it just going to be worth it to just take the more conservative player in TJ Parker? That's really it for their depth. I mean, you have Javon Solomon, their fifth rounder 2 years ago. They took They brought Mike Dana in from the Chiefs, who's just okay depth. That's really it for the D line. It's a good D line. You got your high end talent of Oliver and Rousseau. You got your veteran Bradley Chubb. You have your intriguing D lineman and Deion Walker, as well as Sanders and Jackson and Durant and Parker. But it's still a good quality D line. Then we can go to the linebacker room where maybe not so quality. You have we'll start off with Terrell Bernard, their best linebacker in terms of production. He's their most consistent linebacker and most reliable, but that's in terms of talent. And it's not like he's really good. He's just the best on the team. But he also not only isn't the best linebacker in the world, but he also really isn't the healthiest either. He missed 5 games last year. He missed 4 games the year before. He can be a very solid to maybe good run defender, but definitely has potentially been getting worse, not like regressing like old, like he just hasn't been playing as good as he was earlier in his career. Not the best in coverage by any means. And he is unfortunately this team's best linebacker because your other linebacker, Dorian Williams, wasn't bad for his third year in a small linebacker three slash linebacker four role. He had 60 tackles, but he wasn't the best in coverage. He was a solid run defender, so maybe you don't want your two linebackers to just be solid run defenders and not good cover guys. He had a better tackling year compared to year two in terms of missed tackles, did cut his missed tackle rate down a little bit. Dorian Williams did, but it's not the best linebacker room. You have Alarms Orr, who they took in the fourth round out of TCU, super athletic, super high upside. He can give you a little bit of edge help as well. They don't really need it with Rousseau and Chubb, but he can line up over edge here and there. Seems to be having a good camp, and again, a lot of upside. We'll see if he can put it together, but the upside, the potential is there, which it might not be with Bernard or Williams. And then you have Keontae Jenkins, their unrestricted free agent last year, only played 3 games. So it's really just Williams, Bernard, and Alarms Orr, which isn't that good. And finally, we'll talk about this team's secondary, starting with the corners. You have your best corner, which is Christian Benford. I like Christian Benford. He's just been very consistent and good for the last 3 years now. Only 25 years old. One of the better run defending corners in the league. One of the better blitzing corners in the league. Continues to be an underrated and quality corner. Getting better in coverage, and he by far is the best player on this Bills secondary. Because after that, it gets a little questionable. We'll start with their first round pick last year, Maxwell Hairston. Everything you want to talk about with Hairston, all the speed, all the athleticism, the tools, the talent that he has. He just has to put it together. I think he can. He got a little banged up last year, but he did show you a lot of promise in coverage. Not a great tackler, right? He's a thinner, smaller framed corner, so you don't really expect him to be the best tackler in the world. He still could get better, but you're really looking him to just be a really good cover guy, and he has all the tools to be a really good cover guy. He just has to put it together, which I think he can get to at one point. This season, he's not the best guy to have as your corner two, but maybe 2, 3 years down the line, you'll be like, okay, Benford and Harrison's a very good corner duo. Then you got D. Alford, the veteran presence of this corner room, if you want to call him that. I don't know if you want to call D. Alford the veteran presence. He's just not a good run defender. His coverage has been okay at best. It hasn't really progressed a lot, so it's not the worst. Like his coverage isn't terrible, but it hasn't really gotten better. And at this point, you want him as a quality depth guy, not as one of your starting, not as your starting nickel. Then some of the other depth you have at corner, you have Tommy Walker, unrestricted free agent this year. You have David Igbenison, their second round pick out of Ohio State. You have Jordan Hancock, who, I mean, he wasn't too bad his rookie year. He played 13 games, showed you a little bit of promise in both run, defense, and coverage. And now technically you can technically count him as the veteran of that, sort of second unit at corner, because outside of him, it's Tommy Walker, who hasn't played a snap in the NFL, Davison and Benison, who hasn't played a snap in the NFL, Toriano Pride, who hasn't played a snap in the NFL, and Jordan Dunbar, who also hasn't played a snap in the NFL. The only player that has played more snaps in the NFL than Jordan Hancock, or has played in more seasons than Jordan Hancock off the bench, is Corey Couch. So a very inexperienced corner room, not named Benford and Alford, because Harrison hasn't played a ton either. So it's not the best corner room, and it's a young corner room, and it's really hard to be a corner right away in the NFL. So might not be the best year for this Bills secondary on top of on top of their linebackers. You do have a little bit of better talent at safety, a little bit. Cole Bishop had an okay rookie year as a backup, and I did think he took a nice jump from year one to year two, being the full 17 game starter, had 3 interceptions, over 80 tackles, 2 sacks, was good in coverage, solid in the run as well. I like the trajectory that Cole Bishop is on, and I think he could take another decent jump going from year two to year three. Your other safety, CJ Gardner Johnson, he's okay. You definitely want him as your third safety. He wasn't bad and was pretty serviceable as the Bears' third best safety last year, but not maybe someone you want starting as your starting strong safety. And he's also never really been the healthiest either. And your depth isn't that good either. So maybe their corner, their corners are better than their safeties, because their depth is Damar Hamlin, who only played 5 games last year and just 12 snaps on defense. When healthy, he can be a fine backup safety that can defend the run well. And then Geno Stone, who we mentioned in the offseason changes, honestly was an improvement to the Bengals defense by leaving. So that's probably all that needs to be said about Geno Stone. So this defense was about average last year, slightly above average. Probably, yeah, they were an above average defense in that in that maybe like 15 to 12 range amongst defenses. Might take a step back this year just based on the talent. It's really just Benford, Bishop, Oliver, and Rousseau are their only, like, I trust these guys. You have guys that can take steps up, like a Hairston, a Walker, but it's really just you really just got those four guys as quality, solid pieces, and Bishop's still working his way up. Rousseau's pretty established. Oliver's pretty established. And then Deion Walker's still working his way up as well. So it's not the best defense. A lot on Jim Leonard's plate, although I do like the hire and the potential that Jim Leonard can have as a defensive coach. Now, finally, talking about this Bills special teams real quick. I actually got a competition at punter. You have Tommy Doman Jr., their 7th round pick at punter, and you got Mitch Wishnowsky. Mitch Wishnowsky is a solid punter. Nothing too special, not terrible, just a solid punter. And then don't really know anything about Tommy Doman Jr. The only thing I know is that he was drafted, and I feel like if you're drafted as a punter or kicker, there's some upside. There's some, potential there. So we'll see who wins that battle, because you're not going to keep 2 punters on the team. At kicker, you got Tyler Bass, who missed all of last season, but when healthy, he's a solid kicker, solid to good kicker, can make kicks pretty consistently, not a bad leg as well, and just overall pretty reliable. And then at the return game, you have McCole Hardman, currently as your starting punt returner, who has been a very good punt returner before in his career, although he's not really the same player he once was. But I still think he can be a decent threat in the punt return game. He can still be a quality punt returner. And then you have Ray Davis, who was the best kick returner last year in the league. He made all pro first team as a kick returner. He had a touchdown. He had the most average yards per kick return. So no questions there. You got Ray Davis at kick returner, one of the better ones in the league. Overall, solid special teams unit. Question mark at punter, good kicker, decent punt returner, and a great kick returner. I think that equals to a very solid special teams unit. And now we can talk about this Bills schedule. I have their floor at 9-8, their ceiling at 12-5, with their final prediction at 11-6. Bills over under is at 10.5, so I do have them hitting the over this season. Fun fact about the Bills' record: they won 12 games last year, and since Josh Allen's rookie season, they've never lost less than 10. And since his second season, they've never lost less than 11. So I'm pretty confident this Bills team will win 10 to 11 games. I have their floor at 9-8, even though, again, Josh Allen, since his rookie year, has never won 9 or less games. The only reason their floor is at 9-8 and maybe not 10-7, they have a really difficult schedule. You play the Texans, you play the NFC North, which is the Lions, Bears, Packers, Vikings. You play the Rams. You play the AFC West, which has three really good teams in the Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs. Your own division, yes, you got four easy games with the Jets and Dolphins, but two very tough games against the Patriots. You play the Chiefs as well. You play the Ravens. The only easy games this team has is the two against the Jets and the two against the Dolphins and the Raiders game. That's their only five easy games. And outside of that, it's decent teams or really good teams. So it's a tough schedule for this Bills team. But again, Josh Allen has yet to not reach double digit wins since his rookie season. So while I have their floor at 9-8, I still have their prediction at 11-6. They've gotten 11 wins in like five of Josh Allen's seven or so seasons. So it's pretty confident that it's pretty likely that they get 11 wins. So I'm going with another 11-6 season. Could have maybe gone 12 or 13 because they've done that before. But with how tough this schedule is, with the losses they had on defense, with the uncertainty of the talent on defense, I went the lower end of what we've seen this Bills team win, which is 11 wins. Still going to make the playoffs more likely than not. But I am going to go with 11-6 for the Bills' final record prediction. I'll do it for this Bills preview. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you're new so you don't miss the final few, like six or so team previews we have. We're almost done. Football season's almost here. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.